Leicester local lockdown as police prepare to enforce more advice. One rule for them and another for us. MPs moan at Travel Secretary Grant Shapps, who has some interesting advice of his own. London Borough of Lambeth local authority called corrupt to its core as abuse inquiry hears that prominent politicians, councillors, businessmen and police are all involved. Man stopped by Met Police on his push bike for having no licence plate. This and more coming up. Don't forget, these reports are daily, Monday to Friday. Please remember to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss any future uploads. Hello, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, innies, outies, and of course in-betweeners. My name's Dan and welcome back to another PAP Reports. It's Friday, July the 3rd, 2020. With the pubs, bars and restaurants opening in England tomorrow, except in Leicester, in what's strangely been named Super Saturday, police are still panicking with the expectation that people are going to go mad and there's going to be huge amounts of antisocial behaviour and potentially people drinking too much and increasing the possibility of fights and potential violence. However, it seems that Leicestershire Police don't trust that the residents of the city will adhere to the local lockdown restrictions, as it's been reported that the police will have more police on duty this weekend than they would on a typical New Year's Eve. Assistant Chief Constable Kerry Smith said plans were being made for when restrictions are eased outside the lockdown boundary on Saturday. We realise it is a difficult situation and we are still adapting to these new challenges, she said. We will be continuing our approach of engaging, explaining and encouraging people to do the right thing. Of course, we have the option of enforcement open to us, which we will use where appropriate. Even British Transport Police are ramping up the numbers at railway stations to check advice on non-essential travel is being followed. Advice. Advice. It's advice. Non-enforceable, cockwombles. Interestingly, next door in neighbouring Nottingham, pubs and bars will be checking ID to keep people from Leicester out, which seems a bit stupid, considering if they have made it that far, then the risk's already present, isn't it? However, if you are considering going out in Nottingham, you might want to leave your driving licence and passport at home, as these will not be accepted as proof of ID. It's been said that the ID that will be accepted will be council tax bills, as driving licence and passports don't show where you currently live and you will want to make sure it's a recent council tax bill too, or you could find yourself being turned away. It's also important to note that if you do visit a pub, bar or restaurant, then you will have to give your personal information in order to eat or drink, and the establishment have been asked by the government to hold on to that information for some weeks in case any cases of COVID appear, and then your details, I presume, as it's not exactly clear, will be requested by public health or NHS staff, which the businesses are required to then hand over. Nottinghamshire Police Chief Constable Craig Guilford said his force should also be monitoring the situation. He said if there's any intelligence that comes from Leicestershire about, for instance, a minibus of people coming to Nottingham for a night out, clearly we'd want to move into our education mode for those individuals, he said. I have a feeling we're going to get a few videos out of Leicester this weekend, although I do hope the people of Leicester stay safe. Now, something that you might find interesting based on that last report about police enforcing advice. The Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has defended Boris Johnson's dad after Stanley Johnson flew to his Greece villa despite warnings not to travel unless essential. Shapps has said that Stanley Johnson ignored travel advice, not restrictions, and was therefore within his rights to make the trip, going on to say that it's advice, so everyone can decide what to do with advice. Something I've been saying on this channel for a while now. Although he did say, when pressed by reporters on whether the advice was optional, yes, the clue's in the name, but the quarantine isn't, referring to the quarantine requiring travellers on arrival to the UK to self-isolate for 14 days, including those returning to Britain. MPs have said the incident stinks of one rule for them and another rule for the rest of us, and claimed it echoed Dominic Cummings getting away with his lockdown trip to Barnard Castle. Health Secretary Matt Hancock has previously said foreign summer holidays are effectively cancelled following a Foreign Office travel warning. So providing you have a good reason, and let's be fair, the police are not trained or in a position to be able to tell us whether our reasons are essential or not, because they could very well be essential to us, for example, for the purposes of mental health, then Travel Secretary Grant Shapps has pretty much said it's advice and you can do what you want with advice. Not that I'm telling anyone to break the rules, of course, because, well, that would just be very irresponsible of me, wouldn't it? Humberside Police was seen threatening members of the public on Wednesday with incapacitant spray at the ready after a mob of around 50 people gathered outside of McCall's convenience store. Were the mob trying to buy beers? Were the mob intent on getting themselves some snacks? Not quite. In fact, the mob had gathered because inside was an unnamed man who is understood to have been convicted of possessing more than 14,000 indecent images of children in 2015, for which he was only given a 3-year community order. No jail. In the short clip, the crowd are heard shouting "nonce" as one constable aims his spray at the crowds. 2 stand guard outside the store and another steams out of the store holding the nonce's arm before literally shoving him in the back of the police car before it speeds off with lights and sirens blaring. Humberside Police were called to reports of a disturbance, although it's understood that no arrests were made. A member of an online nonce hunting group said the man was seen in the street before he ran for cover into the McCalls after he was confronted. Now, I get that the guy has served a 3-year community order, and under normal circumstances I would say that he's served his time and paid for his crimes, but I simply can't say that when it comes to nonces. 14,000 indecent images of kids and he gets nothing but a community order is an absolute joke and a slap in the face to the justice for the kids that would have been abused for this gratification, even if he didn't abuse them himself. The chances are someone with that many images didn't just stumble across them or was just curious. Therefore, the chances of them expanding their offending into actual physical noncing is pretty high. And a 3-year community order is an absolute joke, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised here in the UK. Judges seem to sympathise with nonces and give them a break. Now, whether that's because the judges are all heart and understand the difficulties that these people are going through and can see the repent and the acceptance of guilt that these people show when stood in the dock, or whether it's because many judges are nonces themselves and are simply trying to set a precedent so when it comes to their turn to getting found out, they've already laid the groundwork for more lenient sentences. I can't say for certain because, as the owner of this channel, I'll get into trouble. But you can in the comments. So let me know what you think. And as for the cop who pulled his incapacitant spray on the crowd, who clearly weren't being violent, I think he needs looking into, as it seems the police simply resort to threats of violence these days in many cases, rather than trying to engage and calm the situation down. The local authority in Lambeth in London has been called corrupt to its core by barrister Ian O'Donnell in an inquiry into the trading of children for abuse, with some filming the attacks in the town hall. It's been said that pedos infiltrated the borough's children's home in the 60s and senior figures including councillors and police simply turned a blind eye. O'Donnell said at the inquiry that you will hear allegations of the deliberate withholding of documentary evidence from police and inquiries of other interference into investigations of complaints of sexual abuse from children in Lambeth's care. He added that of all the investigations heard by this inquiry, this is the one where senior authority figures appear to have colluded to ensure that paedophiles were not investigated, as a result of which children continued to be abused rather than protected. Prominent politicians, councillors, businessmen and police are all said to have been involved in the abuse of children who were in the care of the local authority, abuse that involved the filming of the abuse, sometimes in council buildings including the town hall, and using children as currency. This abuse included a care home manager who was a convicted paedo, who was allowed to continue working with children, although was later jailed for 10 years for a string of abuse crimes. Turning a blind eye to abuse, huh? Shocking. Not. A man in Barking in East London filmed his interaction with the Metropolitan Police, which took place on June the 30th. The man was accused by one female constable of being antisocial for riding his bike, in her own words, in and out of the road, on the pavement, off the pavement, not wearing a helmet, not wearing a licence plate, and not wearing a high vis. The video itself has already garnered over 1.1 million views in just a few days. The man who was on his own was pulled over by a police van with at least 3 constables, one of which stands directly behind the man while the female cop, who should have had a day off for her PMT, questions him. In the background, you can see at least 3 more police walking down the road towards them. After questioning the man about his lack of licence plate, which the guy seems to have missed her say at the time, he quickly responds, "So everyone who doesn't wear a helmet is antisocial behaviour when they're riding a bike." However, the female officer says, "I didn't say that," before the cyclist zooms in on her arse. Her face. Just got a little bit confused for a moment there. In a statement issued to newspapers, the Metropolitan Police said, at around 20 hours on Tuesday 30th of June, officers on patrol noticed a male riding his push bike on the pavement in Upney Road, Barking. Officers approached him and stopped him to discuss the manner of his cycling. He was asked where he was going and he said he was going home. The man was not searched, was not arrested, and after a short time he was allowed on his way. Police are aware of a video circulating on social media showing an officer providing advice to the man. We will speak to the officer to understand the full circumstances of the entire interaction and the advice that was given. A public complaint has been recorded and this will be assessed by the Met's Department of Professional Standards before it's binned. Of course. I guess with BLM protest fizzling out a bit, the police are getting a bit bored, especially as it seems to require about 6 police to deal with 1 person. That's not intimidating at all, is it? And they wonder why they get responded to the way that they do.
Antisocial behaviour?
Yeah.
Does this look antisocial to you?
Well, the way you're cycling around, yes, at the moment, you're in and out of the road, on the pavement, on the road, not wearing a pedal, not wearing a helmet, not got your lights displayed, not wearing a high vis.
So everyone who doesn't wear a helmet is antisocial behaviour when you're riding a bike?
You say that. Right, I've got one of them as well.
Nottinghamshire Police Constable PC Matthew Thompson is due to appear at a gross misconduct hearing after the weekend for allegations that he breached the police force's standards of professional behaviour in respect of force, discreditable conduct and orders and instructions some 15 months after he was sentenced for assaulting a man by grabbing his dreadlocks and dragging him out of a police vehicle. 40-year-old Thompson was found guilty at Leicester Magistrates Court for assault in April 2019, which was almost a year after the incident actually took place in July 2018. The incident followed a call out to a domestic incident in Caxton Road where PC Thompson and a female colleague attended. It was said that a man was not violent towards police, but was in the officer's face. He was put in handcuffs and placed in the car, but tried to retrieve his phone from his rear pocket to allegedly call friends to the scene in order to retrieve his belongings. So PC Thompson and his female colleague both failed to search the guy before putting him in a car, but there's nothing about the female constable being reprimanded. On April last year, Thompson was found guilty and ordered to pay £700 and a £70 victim surcharge, although no compensation was offered to the victim by the court. By the way, the term victim surcharge is very misleading. It has nothing to do with the victim and actually goes in the court system's pocket. Well, PC Thompson's misconduct hearing will commence on Monday, the 6th of July, and I will of course keep you updated, although the hearing is scheduled to last for 5 days. Now, if you commit a crime, you've got to be prepared to do the time. Although this channel is about highlighting not just the police abusing their power, but also other people in positions of authority abusing their position or generally ballsing up, I don't run this channel as a way to help people get away with any kind of crime or endorsing any kind of crime, specifically crimes that relate to harm, loss or damage. But for those who choose to go about their lives committing harm, loss or damage to people, well, you've got to get what you deserve, and providing it's lawful and legal punishment. So I have to begrudgingly congratulate the police this time on what they call the biggest ever UK operation against organised crime after they managed to crack an encryption to an encrypted phone network. Now, I know that some of you will argue that that's a good thing, but for me, dangerous people who give no thought for the lives of others need to be taken from our streets, including the police. And that's where this gets a little interesting. Over 700 people have been arrested, £54 million in cash and what's been described as tons of drugs and other luxury items, firearms, grenades and ammunition have been seized after police were able to identify and get to the so-called kingpins of organised crime groups, those involved in crimes such as importing guns, drugs and people. The encrypted network, known as Encrochat, was only available on specialised devices which cost criminals around £1,500 per 6-month contract and were designed to be secure against forensic examination, including a self-destruct button that would unretrievably wipe the phone's data if caught. With 10,000 people in the UK registered to the network and 60,000 worldwide. Now, don't get too excited, it wasn't our police who cracked the encryption. It was agencies in France and the Netherlands who managed to break it, but they shared the information with UK police. And since April, the National Crime Agency has been monitoring calls and messages on that network. The operation has also revealed the identities of an unknown number of corrupt police officers and employees in different law enforcement agencies. National Crime Agency said they had prevented more than 200 threats to lives by stopping rival gangs carrying out kidnappings and executions. In London alone, 1,400 Encrochat users were found. The Met Police said the operation enabled them to foil an assassination plot in June and arrest the would-be gunman. Police were forced to intensify activity, however, on 13th of June after Encrochat's operators realised their platform had been breached, sending a message. Today we had our domain seized illegally by government entities. We can no longer guarantee the security of your device. You are advised to power off and physically dispose of your device immediately. Soon after, messages between British users that were intercepted after the alert read such as, "The police are having a field day. If the National Crime Agency, then we have a big problem," another said. Now, although this isn't necessarily a bad thing, getting dangerous people off our streets, this does open the door somewhat to the police being able to get access to other encrypted services, which is a worry. If the Encrochat was one of the most secure services, then how long before the police and other agencies managed to access other, more everyday secure services without our knowledge, and then keep it under their hat whilst monitoring us for hurty words and low-level stuff like making a few quid from selling some weed? It's an interesting story, and I'd like to hear your views in the comments. Hertfordshire Police veteran, 51-year-old PC Nicholas Musto, was suspended in 2018 after an investigation found he lied about a relationship he was having with a vulnerable victim of crime after their relationship was uncovered in 2013. Musto admitted misconduct in Peterborough Crown Court and will be sentenced on the 17th of July. Sarah Green, Regional Director for the IOPC, said Mr Musto willfully abused his position as a police officer to form a relationship with a vulnerable woman he met through the course of his duties. Any officer who abuses their position of trust and power by engaging in sexual relationships can have no place in policing, she said. We are working hard to ensure police forces refer all allegations of abuse of position to us, and we will continue to provide guidance and knowledge to help identify this abuse of trust as early as possible. He must have been off his nut to think that was appropriate. Conservative Lord Sheikh, founder of the Conservative Muslim Forum, has spoken out about how he believes he was picked on by police because he was driving a Bentley coupe with a personalised number plate, and added he was appalled at the closing of ranks after a police sergeant told him he would believe his officer over him. Speaking out about the rise in stop and search of BAME people, Lord Sheikh said, "I have myself been stopped by the police who alleged I was using a phone, which was not so. The sergeant then turned up and said to me if there is a difference of opinion between me and his officer, he would believe his officer. I was appalled by the closing of ranks. I believe I was picked upon because I was driving a Bentley coupe with a personalised number plate." He also highlighted the overrepresentation of ethnic minorities in the nation's prison population, including Muslims, and argued that they face much longer sentences than their white counterparts. He added there is an appalling lack of diversity in our judiciary, starting from Magistrates' Court up to the Supreme Court. Now, I can't say if that's factual or not, as I don't have access to those figures, but surely those in prison, at least the majority, are there because they've been found guilty by a jury, because they have committed a crime. So whose fault is it really if there is an overrepresentation of ethnic minorities in the prison population? And I have to say that since doing these reports, I have seen many a BAME judge. Now, I'm not for a moment suggesting anything that some of you may call me discriminatory over, but there is no mention of when this incident happened. There's no details, there's no statement from the police, and I will always ask myself why people are only speaking out now rather than speaking out at the time. It does seem that since the BLM movement, everybody seems to be jumping on the bandwagon, and I'm not suggesting that none of the incidents happened, but I do have a feeling that some people are using this bending over backwards by the government and police to make false claims. the same as some people will take advantage of any situation. Ex-PC 52-year-old Michael Derbyshire from Worcester Police appeared at Kidderminster Magistrates Court yesterday, charged with rape and sexual assault. The rape is alleged to have happened in November 2019, while the sexual assaults were alleged to have happened in August of 2019. Derbyshire entered no plea to the charges, but has been ordered to appear at Worcester Crown Court on August the 3rd for trial. 2 Police Service of Northern Ireland constables have been charged with possessing a loaded firearm whilst drunk or on drugs. 23-year-old Samuel David Beattie and 24-year-old Paul Coulter were due to appear at Lisbon Magistrates Court yesterday, but due to social distancing issues, they didn't need to attend. Although one constable gave evidence that he believed he could connect the two to their respective charges. The charges relate to an incident that happened on June the 7th this year, where police were called to a house party in Dunmurry in the early hours after a shot was allegedly fired from a legally held weapon into the kitchen ceiling. While they have been charged with possessing a loaded firearm whilst drunk or on drugs, Coulter is also accused of supplying a loaded gun to a person he knew or had reasonable cause to believe was drunk or under an influence of drugs, and Beattie is charged with causing criminal damage to a roof belonging to the female. The prosecution said in the court yesterday that the officers may face possible additional charges, so the Public Prosecution Service was seeking a 4-week adjournment. District Judge Nigel Broderick put the case for mention to July the 30th. Now, I think most of you will have heard of Chief Constable Dave Thompson, West Midlands top plod. We've spoke about him here on the channel before. Well, Chief Constable Thompson has been getting some grief on Twitter after he was on patrol in Ladywood in Birmingham. Ladywood. Wonder if that's a euphemism for an old woman's lady garden. Anyway, he was on patrol with the neighbourhood team when they were called to respond to reports of a 16-year-old boy being held up at knife point. They arrived at the scene and chased the suspects when Thompson stopped to retrieve a bag which his suspects had thrown into the canal, while others maintained the chase. Thompson seems to have overstretched himself whilst trying to retrieve the bag, as he ended up taking a dip in the canal and had to be helped out by his colleagues. It's said that 2 knives were retrieved from the bag that was discarded. A 14-year-old was arrested on suspicion of robbery and possessing a bladed article, while 2 other boys were detained on suspicion of robbery. Now, here is your chance to put your humour skills to work. Get in those comments. I'm sure some of you have already thought up some jibes over Chief Constable Dave Thompson going for a swim in the canal. Big thank you to channel Patreon supporters. Your support is, of course, truly appreciated. And that's all I have for you today. Please like, share, comment and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts, as I know many of you will. And until next time, stay safe, look after each other, film the police and other officials, and have a fantastic weekend. Good night, all. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you like the content and you'd like to help support the channel, you can do so. In the description of every video there are some links to ways that you're able to help support the channel so I can continue putting out content. If you're unable to help us in that way, hit that subscribe button up the top there. If you haven't already, become a subscriber. That is support enough. Share the videos, comment, like, it all helps. If you're looking for something else to watch, up top there is my latest video. Down the bottom there is a video that YouTube recommends for you.